Hello, Venerables. How are you? Hope things are going very well for you. Now, welcome to week 12 of our semester. And for this course, Essence of Buddhadhamma, welcome to lecture 12 on the topic of interdependent origination. We will start off with part 1, conceptual understanding, then moving on to 3 lifetimes, afflictions, actions, and sufferings, the middle way, and then just a few words on homework. For the first half, we will cover conceptual understanding and a little bit of 3 lifetimes, and then in the second half, we will cover the rest. Okay? So far, we are all doing well. We have covered already 11 lectures, and then our last 2 lectures, we've talked about the 3 universal characteristics, the 5 aggregates, and this week's lecture, interdependent origination, will have a close connection with the previous lectures and also with our future lectures on karma and rebirth. Okay, so on this note, let us go on. Now, interdependent origination or paticca samuppada is also or has also been translated as dependent origination, dependent arising, conditioned genesis, in different books by different authors. And it is considered to be one of the most important and profound teachings in Buddhism. And what about the main sources on interdependent origination? Where can we find them in the Tipitaka? Well, mainly in the Nidana Samyutta and the Mahanidana Sutta. Okay, so when we think of interdependent origination or dependent arising, conditioned genesis, we are really concerned with the principle of conditionality or the principle of causal conditioning, right? We're talking about causes and conditions. So looking at this picture here, we have 2 well-known venerables giving talks, writing books on dependent origination. On the left, we have the famous Burmese Mahasi Sayadaw, a discourse on dependent origination, and on the right, we have the very well-known Thai master, Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, right? Paticca Samuppada, practical dependent origination. A very important topic indeed in Buddhism. Now let us take a look at the relationship between interdependent origination and the 4 Noble Truths, which we have covered in earlier lectures, right? We had devoted 2 lectures to 4 Noble Truths and then 3 lectures to each major component of the Noble Eightfold Path. Well, the Buddha very frequently expressed his experience of enlightenment in one of 2 ways, either in terms of having understood the 4 Noble Truths or interdependent origination. He also often said, in order to attain enlightenment, one has to understand the meaning of these truths. All right? So upon enlightenment, the Buddha said that it means that we are able to realize and understand the 4 Noble Truths, and we are able to understand or realize interdependent origination. So the 4 Noble Truths are on the left here. You see there is suffering, first Noble Truth. Second, suffering has an origin. Third, suffering can cease. And fourth, there's a path out of suffering. And then on the right, we have another book, Dependent Origination, the Buddhist Law of Conditionality, by a very famous Thai venerable, Venerable P.A. Payutto. Okay? The principle that the 4 Noble Truths and interdependent origination have in common, what's their commonality, right? That's the principle of causality the law of cause and effect, action and reaction, or action and consequence. So for example, the Four Noble Truths, we talk about the first noble truth, suffering. It is the effect of the cause of suffering, the cause being the second noble truth, and then the end of no suffering, that is the effect, is the third noble truth, and then the cause is the path to the end of suffering, the fourth noble truth. So you can see in this picture here, the first two truths describe our current situation, truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, and then the last two truths describe our potential for growth, the cessation of suffering, and the path to the cessation of suffering. So the causes are the second noble truth and the fourth noble truth, and then the effects are the first noble truth and the third noble truth, respectively, right? So the law of cause and effect, okay, the principle of causality. What about interdependent origination? How does this work then? Well, there's a principle of cause and work too in interdependent origination. For it says that there is no existing phenomenon that is not the effect of interdependent origination, right? So examples the Buddha used to illustrate the nature of interdependent origination include, number one, the flame in an oil lamp. Yeah, it burns because it depends on the oil and the wick. So when the oil and wick are present, the flame burns. But if either is absent, the flame will cease to burn. Okay, so principle of cause and effect, causes and conditions. So that's one example. And then the second example, dependent on the seed, earth, water, air, and sunlight, the sprout arises. Okay, so first example is, imagine it's dark and then you want to light a candle, right? So in order for that to happen, yeah, or to light an oil lamp, you must have oil, you must have wick, right? Without these two, how can the flame of the oil lamp come about? And then second example, if you want to plant a seed and have a plant, you must have the seed, you must have earth, you must have water, air, sunlight, nutrition, right? Then the seed will sprout into a plant, right? So causes and effect, as we can see in these diagrams here, dependent origination is a web of mutually interdependent causes, yeah? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all sort of interrelated. Okay, so just like the Four Noble Truths, interdependent origination is also about the principle of causality, of conditionality, or causal conditioning, no matter whichever words we want to use. And interdependent origination is also closely related to the problem of suffering and rebirth, which Buddhism talks about. So here, interdependent explains the situation, our suffering, right? In which we find ourselves here and now in this world of samsara, in this world of cycle of birth and death, and then how to free ourselves from suffering. Okay, so by telling us the causes and effects, just like the Four Noble Truths, it explains our current situation, yeah, in greater details than the Four Noble Truths. A succinct formula states the principle of causality, idam pratyayata, as when this is, that is, this arising, that arises. When this is not, that is not, this ceasing, that ceases. Okay, so look at this picture here. We have dependent origination, paticca samuppada, arising and cessation of dukkha, explains suffering, and how we can end it with the arising of this that arises, with the cessation of this that ceases, yeah, or that ends. So when this is, right, that is. This arising, that arises. When this is not, that is not. This ceasing, that ceases. From the Bodhisattva. Okay? So when we have, let's say, the example of the flame in an oil lamp, right? When we have the oil, when we have the wick, we have the flame. When we no longer have the oil, when we no longer have the wick, then we no longer have the flame. All right? When we have the seed, when we have the earth, water, air, and sunlight, we have the sprout growing. When we no longer have the seed, earth, water, air, and sunlight, the sprout no longer grows. So these are examples to illustrate this principle of causality. So this principle of conditionality states that all beings, mental and physical, arise and exist due to the presence of certain conditions and cease once their conditions are removed. Nothing except for nirvana is independent. Okay, so all things are interrelated. The law of dependent arising is the way things are. It is Dharma. Even when there is no Buddha in the world to point this out, it is stated in the Samyutta Nikaya, Volume 2, page 55 of the Pali Text Society translation. Whether Tathagatas arise or not, this order exists, namely the fixed nature of phenomena, the regular pattern of phenomena or conditionality. All right? So the Buddha discovers this or rediscovers this and then teaches us. But even if there's no Buddha, well, this law of causality will still exist, just like the Four Noble Truths will exist, independent of whether Buddhas are around or not. Okay, that's why we call them sort of natural laws, laws to explain existing phenomena. All right. So this doctrine, doctrine of interdependent origination, therefore complements the teaching that no permanent independent self can be found. It expresses the general pattern found in a series of conditioned and conditioning links, nidana, culminating in the arising of dukkha, with dukkha or suffering ending when this ceases. So we've talked about the three universal characteristics, right? One of them being not self. So interdependent origination explains, right, why there's no need for a self, yeah, for things to be as they are, okay? Because everything is a matter of causes and conditions, and everything is a matters of links, yeah? Here we'll talk about the 12 links of interdependent origination shortly. So when these links arise, we have suffering, dukkha. When these links end, we no longer have dukkha. Okay, so the cause and end of suffering, which is what Buddhism is all about, isn't it? Yeah, suffering and the end of suffering. So here, the picture shows the close relationship between not self, impermanence, and law of dependent origination. Well, on the right, the illustration, you see on one queue there is self-service, yeah? Ordinary people, lay people, and then on the other shelf, you see, buffet, but non-self-service, right? Monks, yeah? Monks, they realize or they understand the teaching of non-self, so non-self-service in a cafeteria. And then the picture diagram on the left shows the close relationships of anatman, not self, anicca, impermanence, and paticca samuppada, the law of dependent origination. Okay, so having said this, let us move to the 12 links of interdependent origination. A standard formula of 12 nidanas stating how causality operates in terms of the actual pattern and structure of causal conditioning is most common. Okay, so when we think of the term dependent arising or interdependent origination, these 12 links of these 12 links or 12 nidanas very often come to mind. So what are they? Okay, we are on page 2 of lecture 12 notes, if you have the notes in front of you. If not, it is all right. Just listen carefully and you can review in the lecture notes after that. So the first link is ignorance. So conditioned by ignorance, then we have, right, formations. I've given you different terms because different authors, different scholars, different books, they use different terms. So formations or volitional actions or karma formations or constructing activities. So 2 links already. Then conditioned by formations of volitional actions or karma formations or constructing activities is consciousness, 3rd link. Now conditioned by consciousness is mind and body, 4th link, or name and form, or mentality and materiality, or mental and physical phenomena or processes. All right, so we have 4 links already. Ignorance, karmic formations, consciousness, mind and matter. Then conditioned by mind and body or name and form or mental and physical phenomena are 5th link, the 6 senses or 6 sense bases or 6 sense spheres or 6 sense faculties. And then conditioned by the 6 senses or sense bases or sense spheres or sense faculties is the 6th link, contact, or sense contact or sensory stimulation. And then conditioned by contact, sense contact, sensory stimulation is the 7th link, feeling or sensation. And then conditioned by feeling or sensation is the 8th link, craving. Okay, so looking at this picture, we've covered 8 links. So beginning with ignorance, moving on to karmic formations, consciousness, mind and matter, the 6 sense bases, contact, feelings, and cravings. Then let's come to the last 4 links. Then conditioned by craving is link number 9, grasping or clinging or attachment. Conditioned by grasping, clinging or attachment is becoming. Becoming means how we are, what we are, right? Our particular ways of being. And then conditioned by becoming is the 11th link, birth. And conditioned by birth is the 12th link, old age or aging or decay, death, grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair. All this, of course, constitutes dukkha, right? So thus is the arising of this whole mess of suffering, dukkha khandha. Yeah. Well, these 12 links are found in many parts of the Pali Canon. So, for example, Ahara Sutta, Achila Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya, Volume 2, page 20, Pali Text Society translation. Okay, so these are the 12 links or 12 nidanas of interdependent origination. Look at the circle, right? Again, let's go through ignorance, karmic formations, consciousness, mind and matter, 6 sense bases, contact, feelings, cravings, clinging, becoming, birth, then decay, right? Death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair. And hence we have dukkha coming into place, right? The dukkha, the first noble truth coming into place. Okay. So, after this formula is given in the forward mode from 1 through 12, that means we've just gone through it, right? In the clockwise direction. It is then followed by the reverse mode. What is the reverse mode? In the reverse mode, it describes how the cessation of dukkha arises from the complete cessation of ignorance and the consequent cessation of each following link as follows. With the complete cessation of ignorance, formations, volitional actions, karma formations, constructing activities cease. With the cessation of formations, etc., etc., consciousness cease. Finally, with the cessation of birth, old age, death, grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair cease. Okay, so the forward mode means from ignorance, once we have ignorance, ignorance, condition, karmic formations, all the way to decay, right? So this explains the cause of, this explains the cause of suffering. Okay, the second noble truth. Now, the reverse mode means, when ignorance ends, when ignorance ceases, karmic formations will also end. Karmic formations will also cease. Then, with the cessation of karmic formations, consciousness will cease. With the cessations of consciousness, mind and matter will cease. And then we go round, okay, until the cessation of decay, right? Death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. So this explains how we can end suffering, right? The end of suffering, the third noble truth. So this is what we mean by explaining the causes and effects, of suffering, the effects of suffering, how to end suffering, and the effects of the end of suffering, nirvana. All right, so hopefully through this, you have a better understanding of the close relationship between the interdependent origination and the Four Noble Truths. Now, each of the 12 nidanas, each of the 12 links, is conditioned paticcasamuppanna as well as conditioning paticcasamuppada. Therefore, they are all relative, interdependent, and interconnected. Nothing is absolute or independent. Hence, no first cause is accepted by Buddhism, right? Buddhism, as we know, right, it talks about a beginningless beginning. We talk about no ending, right? Unless we attain nirvana. So when we look at this 12 nidanas, these 12 links, they are both conditioned and conditioning. Condition means that they are both effects. Conditioning means that they are both causes. So they are both causes and effects. They are all relative, interdependent, and interconnected. So nothing is absolute or interdependent, right? Well, remember Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh will use the term interbeing. Everything is interbeing, inter-are. All right? Okay. The formula of dependent arising states that conditioned by a certain phenomena, a certain other phenomena comes into being. Theravadin exegetical literature mentions that although this formula states just one condition for each subsequent link, this should not be taken as suggesting that a single cause is a sufficient condition for the arising of each further link. Why is that so? Because each condition is stated as a representative and significant cause. The Theravada tradition stresses the principle that a single cause does not give rise to either a single result or several results, nor do several causes give rise to just one result, but rather several causes give rise to several results. So of course, in reality, right, everything is much more complicated. Several causes giving rise to several results, several causes leading to several effects. So several causes and conditions lead to several effects. But in this representation of the 12 links, although we mention specifically, ignorance give rise to formation, give rise to consciousness, each link that we mention is just a representative and a significant link, right? A significant cause. It is not the only one, okay? So this is what we're trying to say. So in other words, this dependent origination try to simplify the picture by emphasizing the significant and main cause. But in actuality, there are several causes, and they are and this several causes leads to several results, right? So remember in our last lecture when we talk about not self and its relations to the Buddhadhamma, we talk about dependent origination, right? Buddhadhamma explains the 12 links of dependent origination together with another 24 principles of conditionality. Yeah. So this 12 links plus 24 principles actually come in together to give a more complex picture. All right, we're not dealing with Buddhadhamma now, so let us just focus on the 12 links. Okay, just to explain further, right, this relationship of the dependent origination and the Buddhadhamma, explication or elaboration on it. Okay, let us go on. So the formula of 12 nidanas or 12 links explains how dukkha, the first noble truth, comes about, the originating set of conditions for this being the second noble truth. The formula in reverse mode describes the cessation of dukkha, namely nirvana, the third noble truth, and the fourth noble truth, the Noble Eightfold Path, is the way going to the cessation of each of the 12 links and thus of dukkha. Okay, so let us summarize again. So we said, first noble truth is the truth of suffering, right? Second noble truth, how suffering come about. So in this 12 links, it explains, okay? Like we said, going forward mode, how does suffering come about? Ignorance, then ignorance leads to formation, formation leads to consciousness, etc., etc., etc. Then we have birth, then we have age and death. That's how suffering comes about. So first noble truth and the causes for ignorance is the crucial cause, right? Then all the rest are conditioning factors as well. And then just now earlier on we talked about the reverse mode, right? With the end of ignorance, we have the end of formations, with the end of consciousness, the end of name and form, all the way to the end of birth, to the end of aging and death. So that's the third noble truth, end of suffering, nirvana. And how to do this? Then we end ignorance. How to end ignorance, right? We follow the teachings outlined in the Noble Eightfold Path, which you should know very well because we have 3 lectures on that, and you have done 2 essays on that. The one essay being on morality, and then the second essay being on mental development and wisdom. All right, so easy. You can see the relationship between dependent origination and the 4 noble truths. So by uniting the 4 noble truths, the doctrine of interdependent origination offers a methodological explanation of moral and spiritual life. The work of Buddhist practice then is to cultivate those conditions that set in motion and bring about the process of the ceasing of ignorance leading to the ceasing of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. All right, so here we have a book on the left, Dependent Arising in Context by Linda S. Blanchard, the central teaching of the Buddha drawn from the context of the society he lived in 2,500 years ago, right? And explained in terms of modern life, how we can better understand this in our contemporary times. And then on the right, of course, we have the Noble Eightfold Path, right? We have covered 1 lecture on Shila, morality, and then another lecture on Samadhi, mental development, and then the 3rd lecture on Panya, wisdom. You've done 1 essay on Shila, and then another essay on Samadhi and Panya. Okay? So ignorance, of course, identified by 4 noble truths and dependent origination as the most significant cause of suffering. Now, a significant ancient variation on the formula of dependent arising, having detailed the standard sequence of conditions leading to the arising of this whole mass of suffering, thus goes on to state that. Okay. Now, so what we have here is we have look at the 12 links, right? On the left, look at this chart. On the left, we have these 12 links. ignorance, formation, consciousness, name and form, six sense bases, contact, feeling, craving, clinging, existence or becoming, birth, aging and death. Now there's another 12 links, yeah, which put a more positive spin on it. And this is what we are going to look at. This is what we call a significant ancient variation. It is put in more positive terms. Okay, and it can be found in the Upanishata Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, Volume 2, pages 29 to 32 of the Pali Text Society translation. So birth, aging, and death from the left, right? There's 12 links. Birth, aging, and death then leads to suffering, right? Okay, then what happened from suffering? These are another 12 links of variation of the dependent origination. So conditioned by suffering, number one, right? There is faith. Here we're talking about faith in the Buddha's teaching, faith in the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. Then conditioned by faith, there is gladness or contentment. Then conditioned by gladness or contentment, there is joy or rapture. Then conditioned by joy or rapture, there is tranquility or calmness. Conditioned by tranquility or calmness, there is happiness or bliss. And then conditioned by happiness or bliss, there is concentration and samadhi. All right, let's stop here for a while first. Okay, so let's take a look again. So from suffering, right? We have faith in the Buddha's teachings. We practice the Buddha's teachings, the Noble Eightfold Path, and then if we practice well, right? Morality, mental development, and we understand the principles of wisdom, then we will move to experience. Number 3 to number 7. Contentment, rapture, calmness, bliss, and samadhi. Okay, so this explains, yeah, the relationship of the 12 links of interdependent origination to how to get out of it, right? Using another 12 links, put in more positive terms, starting from suffering, then faith in the Buddha's teachings, practicing his Noble Eightfold Path, leading to happiness in terms of contentment, rapture, calmness, bliss, and samadhi. And then let's move on. Conditioned by concentration or samadhi, there's knowledge and vision of what truly is, or wisdom, insight to see truth. And then conditioned by knowledge and vision of what truly is, or wisdom, insight to see truth, there is this enchantment. Then conditioned by this enchantment, there is dispassion. All right, so from suffering to faith, and then from steps 3 to 7, we have happiness, and then steps 8 to 10, right? Wisdom are the components of wisdom. So 8, wisdom, insight to see truth. 9th is disenchantment. 10th is dispassion. So when we have wisdom, right? We are disenchanted with the 3 poisons. We are disenchanted with the ideas of permanence of pleasures, of sensory pleasures of the self. And so we have dispassion, right? We want to move away from these 3 poisons. We want to move away from this wrong understanding of permanence, sensory pleasures, and self. And so accordingly, conditioned by dispassion, there is freedom or deliverance. And conditioned by freedom or deliverance, there is 12, knowledge that the defilements are destroyed, or we have the wisdom that initiates cessation. Okay, so once we have this realization of the 3 universal characteristics, of course, then we have Nibbana, right? We begin to experience Nibbana. And that is included in number 11, freedom, deliverance, and number 12, right? Knowledge that the defilements, the 3 poisons, are destroyed. So we have wisdom, the realization of wisdom initiating cessation. Okay, so this is a significant ancient variation of the formula of dependent arising. On the left of this chart, we have the original 12 links, and then on the right, we have the 12 links put in more positive terms. Yeah, how to end it, right? So from suffering to faith, let's go through again. Faith in the Buddha's teachings, faith in practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, and when we practice Shila, morality and mental development, we will get to experience steps 3 to 7, contentment, rapture, calmness, bliss, samadhi, right? And then when we understand and realize wisdom, we will then move on to have wisdom, sight to see truth, disenchantment, dispassion, and then ultimately, of course, we have deliverance, wisdom that initiates cessation, and this leads us to nibbana. Okay? Understand? Yeah? So, not too difficult, isn't it? All right, let us move on then to interdependent and karma, rebirth and the functioning of personality. Yeah, karma and rebirth we'll be talking about in future lectures. So let us see the relationship of all these concepts. Now, besides explaining the origin of dukkha, the formula also explains karma, rebirth, and the functioning of personality, all without the need to invoke a permanent self. No substantial self can be found which underlies the nidanas, the 12 links, right? Owning and operating them. They simply occur according to conditions. Thus, it is inappropriate, not suitable to ask, for example, who craves, but it is appropriate, suitable to ask what craving is conditioned by. The answer being feeling or sensation. Okay, so interdependent origination explains further why there is no self, yeah, because of these causes and conditions, yeah, these 12 causes and conditions. So all we need to do is just to understand the causes and conditions. So the example given, who crave, that's wrong. We should say that craving is conditioned by feeling or sensation. Okay? Now, the 5 aggregate or Khandha Skandha doctrine is an analysis of the components of personality in static form. The 12 Nidana formula is a synthesis showing how such components dynamically interact to form the living process of personality in one life and from life to life. So in our last lecture, when we talk about the 5 aggregates, right? We break it down, we analyze it. So it is an analysis, a breaking down, right, of this personality into the 5 aggregates, as we can see here: form, consciousness, mental formation, feelings, perception. So it is an analysis. The 5 aggregates doctrine is an analysis. Now, interdependent of origination, the 12 cause link formula is a synthesis. It brings everything together, right, to explain how, with these 5 aggregates, we can move on from one life to another life, right? So we have a more holistic understanding, right? First, we have the analysis, the breaking down in terms of the 5 aggregates. Then we have the synthesis, everything coming up together, everything bringing them together, yeah, to explain how these 5 aggregates move from one life to another. Okay, so analysis and synthesis coming together to give us a more complete explanation. Well, each of the 5 aggregates also occurs in the Nidana, in the 12 links formula. So for example, consciousness, formations, and feelings occur in both lists, right? Of course, consciousness, formations, and feelings are 3 of the 5 aggregates. Now you look at the 12 links, they are also found. Yeah, consciousness, okay, number 3, formations, yeah, number 2, and then feelings, that's number 7. Okay, now material form in the 5 aggregates is the same as the body, part of link 4, and perception is part of mind, with some of its ingrained misinterpretations being tantamount to ignorance. So the other 2 aggregates are body and is body, right? So body is in this link is matter, and then we have perception. Perception is part of mind, so we have mind and matter in these 12 links. And then, of course, with this wrong perception, right, all this leads to ignorance. Okay, so what we're saying is that each component of the 5 aggregates is also found in the 12 links. All right, so we have talked about analysis, breaking down into the 5 aggregates, and then synthesis, bringing them all together in the 12 links to explain from one lifetime to another lifetime. So now let us move on to take a look at the lifetimes. Now, interdependent origination, in short, ignorance, formations, consciousness, mind and body, the six senses, contact, feeling, craving, clinging, becoming, birth, and old age and death. How to interpret this? Yeah, one popular and authoritative way of interpreting the 12 links is sequentially, yeah, in terms of sequence, over the course of 3 lifetimes. The past life, the present life, and the future life. Okay? The first 2 links, ignorance and formations, result in the emergence of this life, with its psychophysical personality from the past, and how, in turn, the actions performed in this life results in rebirth in a future life. Now, interdependent origination, we can interpret it in different ways. So in this section, we will interpret it in terms of 3 lifetimes. Okay? How are these 12 links seen in the 3 lifetimes? So take a look. Now, the past life, right? This is represented by 2 links. Ignorance and formations. Okay, you look at this chart. Past causes, ignorance, and mental formations. They represent the conditions responsible for the occurrence of this life. So because of these 2 past causes, ignorance and mental formations, we have the present life. And the present life has 8 links. Okay, so 5 of these links are present effects, and then another 3 links are present causes of future effects. So present link, the present life, 8 links of consciousness, mind and body, 6 senses, contact, feeling. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This represent the present effect of the past causes. And then another links of craving, yeah, clinging or attachment, and becoming. This represent the present causes of the future effects. So they constitute the process of evolution within this lifetime. All right, so we have past causes, we have present effects and present causes, and then past lifetime, present lifetime, and then with this we have a future life. Future life is represented by 2 links, 11, birth, and then 12, old age and death. Okay, so let us review this again. This is the same thing. In Chinese, it's dependent origination is called 缘起论. Yeah, the 12 links, 因缘. And then these are the 12 links given in Chinese characters as well, right? So, past causes, okay? Ignorance, mental formations, leading to present effects, consciousness, mind and matter, 6 senses, contact, feelings. And then the present causes, we have craving from feelings, right? We have craving, attachment, becoming, which become the causes for future effects of future life, resulting in birth, aging, and death. That's how we can interpret dependent origination in terms of 3 lifetimes. Now, let us take a look at 3 analogies, right, to understand this concept of lifetimes better. So let us take a look at the first analogy taken from Vasubandhu's Kosa. All right. Okay, so Vasubandhu, right? We have come across him. Yeah, he's the author of Buddhadhamma Kosa, a very significant Mahayana exegetical text, right, in Mahayana Buddhism. Now, let's look at the explanation and the analogies. Yeah, as a fundamental distortion and misconception, and not the mere absence of knowledge, ignorance, right? We have the first link, ignorance or avidya, forms the background to all our past actions. And so the formula begins, conditioned by ignorance are formations. In the present, we are heirs, yeah, or we inherit these past deeds, or second link, formations, samskara or samkara, which are collectively the various past actions, volitions, impulses, and activities of the mind, both wholesome and unwholesome. Okay, so this explains the first two past causes, ignorance, mental formations. Now let us move on. In the process of rebirth, at the moment of conception in our mother's womb, we come into existence with the third link, consciousness, vijnana, that is directly conditioned by these past deeds. Okay, so with the past causes of ignorance, mental formation, we have consciousness, and consciousness arises from conception, yeah, the moment of conception in our mother's womb. That means the sperm, right? As you can see in this picture, the sperm and the ovum or the egg coming together, fusing together, we have conception, and that gives rise to consciousness. And then with consciousness, we have gives rise to our mind and body, nama, rupa, which then conditions the fifth link, our five physical senses and the mind, sada, yatana, which are the physical and mental capacities with which we turn to the world. So in Vasubandhu's Abhidhamma Kosa, links number 4 and 5, right, are related to the gradual development of the fetus in the womb. Okay, so we have past causes, ignorance, mental formation, giving rise to consciousness with the conception in the mother's womb, right? The fusing of the male sperm and the female ovum or egg. We have mind and matter, 6 senses coming together, and this in Abhidhamma Kosha is represented by the development of the fetus, yeah, in the womb. Okay, now from the moment of birth, by way of this senses, by way of these 6 senses, we have various contexts, that's spasa or phasa, and experiences come to us leading to pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings, vedana. And then Vasubandhu relates number 7 to the stage of development when a child learns to distinguish clearly those things which will bring pleasure and those that will bring pain. All right, so due to past causes, we have consciousness, we have conception in the mother's womb, right? Sperm and ovum coming together, and that coming together give rise to the development of the fetus, yeah, represented by mind and matter, 6 senses, and then whenever there is context, right, we then have feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or feeling. And in the Abhidhamma Kosa, this link number 7 is associated with a child, when it learns how to discern, how to distinguish what is pleasure and what is displeasure, what is neutral. Okay, so from egg and from the ovum and sperm to the fetus to a child, okay, by stage number 7. Then from here, this world of feelings, link number 7, some of which we like, some of which we dislike, some of which we are indifferent towards, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, give rise to craving, yeah, tanha, for more of the pleasant feelings and fewer of the painful feelings. For the unpleasant feelings, we have aversion. And for Vasubandhu, in the Abhidhamma Kosha, a link number 8 is particularly associated with the awakening of sexual passion at puberty. All right, so we're feeling as the child grows up, wants to have more and more lust, all right, craving, greed for the pleasant feelings, and have aversion for the unpleasant feelings. And this craving is symbolized by sexual passion when the child matures into puberty, into adult, right? So look at this picture here. From childhood, we have adult, sexual passion, puberty, that's represented by craving. And in response to our craving, we determined on, and number 9, yeah, the ninth link, cling to, upadana, various causes of action as the means to bring about the particular pleasant experiences we repeatedly crave. So we carry out these particular courses of action, and as we repeatedly carry them out, they become, link number 10, right? Our particular ways of being, bhava. Okay, so from feelings, right? From sexual passion, puberty, from feelings, right? This discrimination of our feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. We go on to develop craving, craving represented by sexual passion, puberty, yeah, when we become adult. And then, with these cravings, they become our ways of life, yeah? They become how, they explain how we become what we are, right? Our particular ways of being. Why we keep on having more and more greed, right? For the things we like, and how we keep on having more and more aversion for the things that we don't like. So from craving to attachment, clinging on to those things that we like, then aversion to those things that we don't like. And through this process of craving, clinging, we become, right, more and more the person that we develop into. All right, so this is what we mean by becoming. So from childhood to adult to mature age to old age. And then ultimately, of course, we have to death, yeah? And then with death, and so a future birth, right? 11, jati, conditioned by these very causes of action, must occur. So whatever is born will once more age and eventually die, right? That's number 12, jara marana. So the process goes on without any known beginning or end. Okay, so this is how we can understand the first interpretation, right? Or one interpretation of interdependent origination in terms of the 3 lifetimes. Okay, now let's just review it again. From the first 2 links, right? Ignorance and mental formations. These are the past causes. We have the 5 present effects of this present lifetime: consciousness, mind and matter, 6 senses, contact, feelings, and present causes, right, of this lifetime: craving, attachment, and becoming. And with these present causes, then it gives rise to our future lifetime, yeah, which comes from future effects, the 11th and 12th causes: birth, aging, and death. And in terms of Vasubandhu's analogies, ignorance and mental formations give rise to consciousness, the conception, the fusing of the male sperm and female ovum in the mother's womb. And then from this fusion, we have the fetus coming into being, right? That is seen in the development of mind and matter, 6 senses. And then with that, once we have contact, we have feelings, pleasant, unpleasant feeling. And that, in Vasubandhu's analogy, is a child, right? When the child is able to distinguish what is pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And then as a child distinguishes his feelings, that develops craving, all kinds of cravings. And for Vasubandhu, this is represented especially by sexual passion in puberty, when we become adult, yeah, from childhood to adulthood. And then with craving, we have all kinds of attachments, clinging, and then we become what we are, right? We develop over time, yeah. As we mature from adult, we mature into old age, then into death. And then from this becoming, we have another, with death, right? We have another new birth, another, and then new birth, and then of course in the future life, new aging and death. That's the future. So 2 links in the past, 8 links in the present, and 2 links in the future. So this is one interpretation of dependent origination in terms of the 12 links. And then we have looked at Vasubandhu's analogy of these 3 lifetimes. Okay, so let us then end the first half of this lecture with Vasubandhu's Buddhadhamma Kosa's analogy. And then in the second half of this lecture, we will take a look at 2 more analogies and then move on to 2 other interpretations of interdependent origination. Ken? Good. have a good break, and we will come back to this again. All right? Thank you.